Filmmakers and field guides spent 16 years following a family of lions, whose male offspring became known as the Mapojos. They witnessed extraordinary behavior as the Mapojos embarked on a devastating quest for territory.
That moment where they took over their first territory, that was the start of the bloodbath.
These 6 males would conquer more land than any lions before them.
They were savage in their approach,
eliminating any threat to their reign.
We estimated that they killed more than 100 other lions in 1 year.
The Mapojos were unprecedented in their aggression and violence. Their story exposes the rarely seen dark side of lions and their constant struggle to survive. In the northeast of South Africa, the Sabi Sand Game Reserve shares a border with the Kruger National Park. More than twice the size of Yellowstone, the Kruger provides an abundance of wildlife with a direct route into Sabi Sand. With so much prey, it's the perfect habitat for lions. And it's here that for over a decade, filmmakers and field guides witnessed the epic rise of the Mapojo lions. For generations, the Sparta Pride has lived at the heart of the Sabi Sand. In 2002, they were rearing 10 cubs, including 5 males. They were unnamed as cubs, but they would later be called Scar, Pretty Boy, Rasta, Kinky Tail, and Mr. T. These young brothers would grow up to become known as the Mapojos.
During the time that these guys were cubs, I was actually in Sabi Sand with the lions, and I do remember that Sparta Pride with so many cubs. I remember there was 5 males.
We've watched lions from just a few months old, and often it's very clear that some are more bold than others, and that others are a little bit more curious.
They might be more likely to engage with new things, try hunting new objects, and others may be more likely to just hang back, be a little more timid, and sort of learn a bit more from the sidelines.
The particular ones that stood out for me were the 2 youngest. There was one that was clearly the leader. He was very brash. And there was always right behind him, his little brother. You could see this was a partnership from an early age. And it turned out that this was Mr. T and Kinky Tail.
It wasn't just the strong bond between the two youngest Mapojos that set them apart from their older brothers. These two cubs were special. You could tell from the early signs.
Pride had pulled down a buffalo on one occasion. One of the big male, the fathers of these Mapojos, had taken over his carcass. And this little male youngster was devouring the carcass quickly and quietly while this male was just holding on there. Shows a bit of fearlessness that a cub like that will just get in there. Could easily have received quite a swat from the paw of that male. Those were early days, but I think that behavior that I witnessed with that little one suggests that it was most likely either Mr. T or Kinky Tail as they became known.
I think for the people that were lucky enough to witness the Mapojos as young cubs, you could have predicted then that this was going to be a real force to be reckoned with for other lions.
As long as those 5 males stayed together, you could tell they were destined for greatness.
Only 1 in 8 male cubs survive to adulthood. If a cub is born into a healthy pride that's protected by a strong group of males, then this gives them the best chance of making it through the dangerous first year of life.
We use the term pride to refer to the females. The females occupy the same general area for their whole lives, and their daughters may grow up and join them in those prides. So a big, strong pride can last for decades. Males, in contrast, form coalitions, and so that's a male-male grouping, and it may move many times through its life and end up very far from where it was born.
The fathers of the youngsters that became the Mapojos was a great coalition. It was the West Street males, and they controlled a couple of prides. I remember the West Street males being pretty good fathers. They were very tolerant.
Male lions have this sort of view popularly that they don't do much, they just lie around, they mate, they scavenge food off the females. I think the reality of it is that males do perform very serious and important roles in a pride. So they have to patrol for territory, they have to defend cubs, defend females. Females are absolutely critical to a pride. They are its core social unit. The males may come and go, but the females will persist for generations. And that really makes a stable structure for lion sociality.
Lions are one of the only gregarious cats in the world, and they get along better when they work together. And there's nothing more functional than a healthy working pride.
The Sparta Pride had 10 cubs, including the 5 young Mapojos. A pride this large had to target big prey. But the Sparta females and West Street boys took hunting to another level.
Males play an absolutely critical role when you're starting to look at very big prey. They will help the pride take down these very big, dangerous animals. It's extremely dangerous for lions to take on an animal like a giraffe, partly just because of their size. A single kick from a giraffe can kill a lion. It's a very high risk but high reward strategy.
If the females are ahead and they're busy trying to pull down a large animal, those males will get stuck in. And the West Street males are no exception.
An adult male giraffe can weigh nearly 1,300 kilograms and feed the Sparta Pride for days. For young lions, in a place like the Sabi Sand, danger lurks everywhere. While Mr. T and Kinky Tail were still cubs, the rise of the mighty Mapojos almost came to a tragic end. In 2003, the young Mapojos, Mr. T, Kinky Tail, Rasta, Pretty Boy, and Scar, were now between 6 and 18 months old. They had been born into a strong family, with a powerful coalition of males to protect them. Their mothers, the Sparta Pride, were superb hunters. The Sparta females would be the key to helping the cubs overcome their biggest challenge: learning to hunt.
Young lions will start honing their hunting skills from very early on. They'll start stalking whatever is in the area. And they will start to move on then to building up their skills and their confidence with then trying it out on different prey animals, often completely inappropriate ones, like I've seen them hunt porcupines, which are a very prickly proposition, and things like the honey badger is a terrifying thing to take on because it's a very aggressive animal. It might not be something that young lions would ideally want to take on, but it's all part of building that confidence and the skill set for becoming effective hunters in the future.
For the Mapojos, that future would be filled with bigger and stronger prey, especially one of the most dangerous animals in Africa, the buffalo.
The largest herd I've recorded here is just over 1,400.
Other than that, there's small bachelor groups of easy 15 or 20 in a group, particularly along the river. And this is generally the groups that get targeted.
Big bull buffalo weighs 900 kilos. It's 6 times as much as a female lion, or it's over 4 times as big as a male. They've got big hooked horns. They can really damage a lion.
Watching lions hunting buffalo is always incredibly exciting, but it's often a 50-50 of either or being damaged.
They ideally would like to go after just one buffalo at a time, but even if they catch a solitary bachelor, they often make enough noise. The bull does as it's going down, it attracts helpers, other buffalo that come and try to thump the backs of the lions as they're holding down on the prey. Imagine then what happens when you have a whole herd of buffalo. Thousands of kilos of these animals ferociously. It's like a sheer wall of terror going straight towards the lions.
I've seen a lion full grown get thrown in the air and do 2 backflips.
In spite of the danger, if they were going to learn how to tackle such massive prey, the young Mapojos would need to be right in the middle of the action.
Cubs will learn very important things from watching the rest of the pride hunt. They're learning how to secure very rewarding prey in the future, so they will become bigger, they will become stronger and healthier.
Sparta Pride often used to take their youngsters with them on the hunt. They would follow not too far behind the adults. As happens 90% of the time, the buffaloes ended up turning on the lions and chasing them.
The pride adults tried to retreat. But the young Mapojos and their siblings were caught in the middle of the angry buffalo herd.
It's like a tempered bowling ball through skittles when they come running in. Lions run everywhere.
They must have chased them some distance, and in doing so, these youngsters must have just got caught in the traffic.
A large herd of buffalo will go search out cubs that are hidden in bushes and throw them around, stomp them.
They will try and gore it with their horns, but pushing down with the bust to squash it. And that's how they actually killed it.
I do recall quite a lot of sadness around when a couple of the cubs of the Sparta Pride were killed.
Some of the Sparta lions were killed by the buffalo. The 5 young Mapojos were lucky to have escaped. It seemed like destiny had other plans for these brothers.
If those cubs had not survived, that whole Mapocho coalition would never have come into being.
Mr. T, Kinky Tail, Rasta, Scar, and Pretty Boy had beaten the odds and all survived past their first year of life. But a new threat, another danger, lay just beyond the horizon. In 2003, an unknown male entered Sparta Pride territory.
When new males come into an area, it's an extremely dangerous period for young cubs.
Male lions, when they take over a territory, they kill every cub.
The young Mapojos were lucky. Against everybody's expectations, the intruder didn't kill the adolescent brothers. The new male also escaped death. In fact, the Sparta females and the West Street boys accepted him into the pride.
I think it's the first that's ever happened from what's been documented. Initially, you would think the dominant males at the time, they would just kill him or chase him. But for some reason, he managed to either stay submissive or just be accepted quickly.
It seems most likely to me that he was a half-brother to the 5 younger males, because at that age, if he was about 4 years old, when he came in and joined that group, the fathers only really would have tolerated him if he was one of their sons from a nearby pride.
Over the next year, the new male, known as Makulu, became a full member of the Sparta Pride and big brother to the 5 now adolescent Mapochos. Also during this year, field guides saw that the close bonds between Mr. T and Kinky Tail that started when they were small cubs had now strengthened, and they were inseparable.
Mr. T was the dominant one, and Kinky Tail was definitely his right-hand man. He would be there to back up Mr. T in any situation.
I think he was there almost as his sidekick. He always had Mr. T's back. He was always there when he needed him. The bond that the two of them had was incredible. They enjoyed being together, and that was special.
But peace in a lion pride is short-lived for young males. When they reach sexual maturity, they're forced to leave the pride, to face the world on their own. In 2004, the young Mapochos, along with Makulu 2 years their senior, were pushed out of the pride by their fathers. As nomadic males, they would now have to fend completely for themselves, hunting alone, with no territory of their own, no prides of females, and the constant threat from patrolling dominant males. During this critical nomadic period, more male lions are killed than at any other time.
The main thing is that now that they've reached that point in life where they have to make that journey on their own, they've left home, they've got to stand or fall by themselves, but there's 6 of them. That's the key advantage they have in life.
By sticking together, these 6 males could turn the odds of survival in their favor. The Mapocho Coalition was formed. There was a long way to go before they would be big enough, strong enough, and confident enough to claim a territory of their own.
At the start, it was difficult to really identify them because their manes had just started coming through. But the names that developed in time, first of all, there was Makulu. He was older.
He was a very big lion. He had a beautiful black mane. He was a magnificent animal.
One started becoming called Pretty Boy,
because he was an incredibly good-looking male.
We had the skew spine, or the scarred male.
He had a very distinct scar on his back left hip and spine.
Then we had Rasta, or dreadlock.
He had obviously got something caught in his mane and looked like a real dreadlock.
Mr. T,
who had a real mohawk type mane.
and then Kinky Tail were the 6 Mapochos.
The word Mapocho is a Swazi word for like a security group or a group operating together. We didn't realize it at the time, but looking back now, that's exactly how they operated.
Young males, when they first leave home, they've got two problems. First is they're young, so they're stupid. And then they're males, so they're clumsy. So it's very hard for them to get that first kill.
The Mapojos had never had to take down large prey on their own. Making a kill would be their first challenge of survival. Over the next few months, the Mapojos would keep honing their hunting skills, trying to build on their confidence taking large prey. But even with a coalition of 6 lions, it was going to take time. Often they became opportunists, scavenging at carcasses wherever they could. Sometimes bullying females aside so they could quickly eat their fill. But with ever-watchful dominant males around, this led to the Mapojos having some narrow escapes. Eventually, the young Mapojos became the big game hunters they were destined to be. Buffalo were targeted most, but they also took down hippo, young rhino, and like their fathers before them, they even killed giraffe.
What was quite unique about them, when they were hunting, they would move together as a group.
Kinky Tail was like a fox terrier. You know, he was game for anything.
He was more like the brute. He did a lot of the leg work. Makulu Mapocho would often be the one that worked out where to go and would be the first one to loop around to like almost direct the show. And then Kinky Tail was the one who did the brute work of the attack, so grab on a buffalo.
Mr. T and Kinky Tail were always in the middle of everything. They were always a little more aggressive in the actual kill.
The fact that these males learned how to hunt buffalo really was the key to their success, because they all grew to be big and strong.
As their confidence grew, one individual began to take lion behavior to an extreme.
Often around the kills while they were feeding, it seemed as if on many occasions that Mr. T was more of the aggressive one.
He was the one that would go in for everything. Whether it be fighting with his own brothers, he had no problem having a go.
Mr. T may have been the youngest, but that didn't stop him from trying to dominate the coalition. But there was something standing in his way.
In the Mapohos, Makulu had the darkest mane and he was the dominant male. The dark mane males are really quite superior. They have higher testosterone. When two males are in a competition with each other, we expect the black mane male to defeat the blonde mane male.
Initially, Makulu was definitely the dominant one. He was a boss. He put the other 5 in their places.
Mr. T would have to wait his turn. Now, with Makulu in charge, these young nomadic males had finally become a confident hit squad of 6. A coalition ready to seize a territory of their own.
We knew there was big changes coming, but I don't think we had any idea of the level of violence that it could go to.
The Mapohos were finally ready to take over their first territory. In 2006, led by Makulu, the 5 brothers, Pretty Boy, Scar, Rasta, Kinky Tail and Mr. T were about to embark on a reign of terror, the likes of which had never been witnessed in Sabi Sand. For most field guides, just seeing 6 male lions together was unheard of.
I can remember the first time I saw them all together was when they came for water one morning at a lake. I had a feeling they were going for water, so I positioned my vehicle around. And it turned out that they all came down to drink one by one, and the 5 of them lined up together drinking. I just couldn't believe it. It's still one of my iconic photos.
We never expected to see 6. It was, from our side, something that was unheard of, almost unnatural.
The key thing to realize about coalitions is that it's all about size. You want to have at least 3 or more males and have a good chance of taking over a territory. 6 lions is definitely considered a big coalition.
The only way the Mapohos could claim their own territory was to take it by force. Their first encounters would be crucial. In 2006, the Mapohos entered the northern Sabi Sand, ruled by 4 dominant males.
Usually when lions first come in, they're quite quiet. These guys came in like a wave, and they didn't care. They were loud, they roared. They marked territory from the get-go.
The northern males tried to defend their land and prides. But the Mapohos were just too strong.
It only took them killing one of the 4 males, and the 3 remaining males ran. They couldn't stand their ground. They had no chance at all.
Finally, the Mapohos had taken over a significant territory of their own. A foothold from which to expand with their newfound dominance and confidence.
That moment where they took over their first territory, that was the start of the bloodbath. At that point, they knew no one was standing in their way.
Over the next year, the 6 Mapohos took on any dominant males that crossed their path.
Male's instincts, as soon as he's seen he's outnumbered, he's going to run. That's exactly what they did, and if they were caught, they were killed.
It was 6 gangsters coming in and decimating our lines.
The more confident they got, their territories expanded because they kept pushing males further away, back into the Kruger, so really establishing a very large area.
Kicking out the resident males is only the first step on the path to dominating a territory.
We were worried. We had prides that were settled, we had young cubs. You've seen cubs born and you get to 6, 8 months, you know them, they start getting their individual characters, and then these guys came.
When new males come into an area and take over a pride, it's an extremely dangerous period for young cubs. The males have no need to basically act as stepfathers and invest any resources in rearing another male's cubs.
Male lions, when they take over a territory, they kill every cub. And any female that tries too hard to protect their cubs, they're gonna get killed too.
Females will respond quickly to any evidence of new males on the scene, and they will retreat towards their cubs, and they will also band together to try to repel those incoming males and stop them killing the cubs. If the cubs are a bit older, she might move away with them just to not have to deal with that physical confrontation. The cubs are very immobile, then it's easier just for the female to confront that threat head on.
I was watching the Ottawa Pride, which was a pride of 3 females and 11 cubs. The Mapokos, you could see them tracking down this particular pride, and they actually had a conflict with the pride.
It's pretty ruthless because you've got the females obviously trying to defend the cubs. The male's aggression is just on another level.
Females can fight to the death in defense of their cubs.
There was a lot of action, there was a lot of running around, there was fighting around the Land Rovers. At one stage, I thought one female was going to go over the top of our Land Rover to try and get away from the males.
In all instances where the Mapokos started killing cubs, the females tried to protect their cubs, but the Mapokos were just too strong for them.
A raging male lion out on a mission to do one thing, and that was to kill the cubs. Those lionesses had no chance.
With the mother's defenses broken down, there was nothing standing between the Mapojos and the Ottawa Pride's young cubs.
you've got a team of 6 working to find you, it's difficult to hide little ones that can't keep up. And so that's how they were picked off slowly.
The whole Ottawa Pride, I think, had 11 cubs in it. They were all killed.
When you see males killing cubs, is a very heart-wrenching thing for anyone to see. Even as a biologist, and I know it has a function evolutionarily, it's very difficult to witness.
When they lose their cubs, females soon come into estrus, which enables them to breed again. Exactly what the Mapojos needed in order to perpetuate their own bloodline.
Over a period of about 3 months, every cub that we had here, the whole lot were killed by the Mapocho and eaten. Mr. T and Kinky Tail, those two in particular, were quite bad in how intense they were of actually ensuring that they found and killed those cubs.
A quarter of all cubs that die in their first year are killed by male lions. It's a natural part of a pride takeover.
It seems like from all the stories that we've heard, that Mr. T was the most vicious of all these lions.
The violence normally ends with cub infanticide, but the Mapojo coalition was anything but normal. With the resident males of the Ottawa Pride gone and their cubs killed, the Ottawa females would soon be fertile once more. But with the 6 Mapojos coming into their prime, oozing testosterone, the competition amongst them to breed was intense.
Boiled over to the point where we even saw them kill lionesses that were in estrus, willing to mate with them. And not being able to decide, the 6 of them would turn on her and pull her apart.
First thing I saw was Mr. T. He was busy biting into the back of a lioness. And then he started suffocating her. It took about 10-15 minutes, and eventually the lioness was dead. And after that, Mr. T proceeded to eat her.
Some of the behavior that's been described for the Mapojos in terms of killing females certainly sounds unusual. Killing females from within a pride, females that they've already been breeding with and they might have cubs with, is very unusual behavior and something that I certainly haven't witnessed in the wild.
Over the next year, the Mapojos took over pride after pride, killing any lions that were a threat.
I don't think any of us can be certain as to how many lions were eventually killed by the 6 Mapocho. You could see that the population had dropped because of these guys.
At one stage, we estimated that they killed more than 100 other lions in 1 year in the Sabi Sands.
It's an extraordinary number. It seemed that with the Mapojos in power, no lions in the Sabi Sand were safe. The Mapojos looked unbeatable. The only threat to their power now came from within the coalition itself.
The biggest fight I saw was between Mr. T and Makulu.
By 2008, the Mapoho coalition had overthrown many dominant males and conquered a vast area. An area so large it was previously divided into more than 5 separate territories.
This is the first coalition that we had ever heard of that had claimed such a large territory. The distance that they covered pretty much dominated most of the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, which is close on 70,000 hectares.
That's over 160,000 acres, 7 times larger than Manhattan.
Somewhere like Sabi Sands, where you have dense prey, available water, and a high density of other lions as competitors, you're likely to have much smaller, more condensed territories. The fact that the Mapojos took up almost all of the Sabi Sands as their own territory is really a testament to how powerful a coalition they were.
With all their competition eliminated, the Mapojos now controlled more than 8 prides. They were the undisputed kings of Sabi Sand. But for some of them, that wasn't enough.
We often think of coalitions as a smoothly functioning unit, as if there's no real conflicts within the group. There may be 1 or 2 dominant males, and the subordinate males then have to decide, well, is it worth staying here as a helper to these few dominant individuals, or maybe we should just split in 2.
Mr. T and Kinky Tail were not born to be helpers. They wanted to be in charge. But one lion was standing in their way.
Makulu was definitely the dominant one of the Mapoho. He was a boss. The biggest fight I saw was between Mr. T and Makulu, and it was Mr. T that came off second best. Makulu managed to grab him on one of his legs, and Mr. T was injured. That's where the split came. I think that might have been the reason, or one of the reasons, that the 2 left the 4.
For most field guides, just witnessing a coalition of 6 males had been a first. But having this coalition split into 2 groups was unheard of. But that's exactly what happened in 2008. Mr. T and Kinky Tail were 6 years old and in their prime when they separated from the older Makulu, Pretty Boy, Rasta, and Scar.
I'd never seen this happen where coalitions actually split up and set up 2 different coalition areas adjacent to each other.
When the 6 of them split, Mr. T and Kinky Tail ran the north central part of the territory. where the 4 remaining ran the western sector. Where I was based, it was Kinky Tail and Mr. T that ran the area. From us initially hating this because of what they were doing, they became our males. They became the males we knew and the males we grew to love. Mr. T and Kinky Tail looked like they enjoyed each other's company. It looked like they enjoyed being together. They looked like brothers. From then on, we very seldom saw any of the other boys.
They would still meet on occasions, but they definitely had 2 different territories.
Mr. T and Kinky Tail could now focus their efforts on having offspring of their own.
Lionesses feel safe when you've got a strong coalition looking after the cubs, not allowing anybody else to come and kill the cubs. It makes their life a lot easier.
We had quite a few cubs around. I think at least 15 of them between the Ottawa and the Shimongwe Pride.
Many prides, with many new cubs, filled the Mapocho's separate territories. It was the most peaceful time since the coalition was formed. With that peace came a new challenge: to be fathers.
Males are not generally patient with cubs, but Makulu seemed to be the most patient with them. Numerous occasions we saw cubs climbing on him, pulling his mane, and he was always very tolerant of them.
To be a good father, it's not just that they have to give their cub a pat on the head. They actually have to be patrolling the area to keep strangers away.
Male lions patrol their borders for territorial defense. They use various methods. They roar. They scent mark. And they are patrolling physically just to show basically a presence in that area.
And all that is to warn all the other male lions in the area that this is my pride, this is my territory. If you come in here, we're gonna fight.
In the western half of the Mapocho's territory, one lion in particular took the lead for protecting the coalition's borders.
I often found Makulu away from the other Mapochos. He was all on his own. All I could presume is that he was patrolling his area.
He would be absent at times for a week at a time and then come back and join up with them. This is because they had such a vast territory to patrol, and he used to do most of the patrolling.
Often we'd hear him roaring with his very distinct call that a lot of us could recognize.
I'm still yet to hear a lion roar like Makulu. He had one of the oddest but incredible roars of any lion. Where most lions will roar for maybe 45 seconds, a minute, and then rest. He would continue
By 2010, it had been 4 years since the Mapojos' first takeover. While Makulu was making a show of defending his borders, his task was easy compared to Mr. T and Kinky Tail's defense of the East. Their entire eastern boundary joined the vast Kruger National Park, home to many nomadic males that wanted Mr. T and Kinky Tail's territory and prides.
There's always threat from somewhere, whether some nomadic male or some other large coalition of males that want to control your pride.
We'd seen quite a few young nomadic males come in from Kruger, and Mr. T and Kinky Tail saw them off every time. They were almost like the defenders. They were the ones taking the hits. The only way that other lions could get to Makulu and the three were through Kinky Tail and Mr. T.
For 2 years, Mr. T and Kinky Tail had fought off intruders, defending not only their territory, but also their brothers to the west.
They didn't realize that there was a coalition of 5 that we now call the Machingalans that were slowly making their way south.
Seeing off individual nomads was one thing, but for Mr. T and Kinky Tail to face a coalition of 5 males on their own was a challenge on another level.
Majingalanis were big, young, strong, and they knew how to fight.
On the 8th of June 2010, a coalition of 5 male lions called the Majingalanis entered the northeastern section of the Sabi Sand. Since the Mapojos had first arrived, no one had seen such a strong coalition enter their territory. As a force of 6, the Mapojos were unbeatable. But since the split, it was left to just Mr. T and Kinky Tail to defend their eastern territory. Now it was the Mapojos' turn to be outnumbered. It was 2 against 5.
Because it was Mr. T and because it was Kinky Tail, because they'd never lost a fight before, there was no reason for them to believe that they couldn't handle this intrusion. But Majingalanis were big, young, strong, and they knew how to fight.
I didn't know what to expect. I did not know what was going to happen. I was scared.
This young male lion came hurtling across the road. You could see something was wrong. But I never expected to see Mr. T and Kinky Tail right behind him.
They just shot out of nowhere and they chased him for about 100 meters.
Having isolated one of the Majingalani intruders, Mr. T and Kinky Tail went on the attack.
Mr. T grabbed him behind the neck and rolled him, and Kinky Tail climbed into the groin straight away.
was roars and the most terrifying sounds. That was hair-raising stuff to see.
Mr. T was raked numerous times in the face. I remember him going in and the young male actually locking onto his ear. And Mr. T had to shake him off, almost ripping his ear off. But all the time while he was doing this, Kinky Tail was doing damage to the groin and the back legs. And he roared. Kinky Tail roared while he was doing the damage. He had a mouth full of lion and he was roaring. I've never seen that or even heard of that before. I've never witnessed anger, aggression or power like that ever.
Majingilan just didn't give up. He kept on fighting back as well.
It was two heavyweights against a middleweight and he lasted. We heard what it sounds like for a male lion to scream from pain.
It was with mixed feelings that I left the sighting. At that stage, I was just quite relieved that it was not Kinky Tail and Mr. T on the receiving end of this brutal fight.
The injured Kinky Tail and Mr. T spent the day nursing their wounds, while the Majingalani was left to die by the roadside. Once more, they had successfully defended the coalition's territory.
I did go back that evening. Kinky Tail was nursing a badly injured right paw. I think he possibly got bitten through the paw.
Later on during dinner time, I just heard roaring on the open area and around the lodge. Suddenly, one of the rangers came knocking on my door, and the only words he said was, "Grab your camera and come."
It didn't take long for Karin to find the source of the noise. The Majingalani intruders were on the move.
We were following the Majingilans up the road, and I thought, no, I can't believe this. It's going to happen again.
It was as though the Majingalani were coming for revenge.
They'd made quite a bit of distance on us, so we had to try and catch up. And as we dropped through another little dip and came up on the far end,
we just saw a cloud of dust and roaring, growling.
A massive war broke up.
Still, we were not sure who was who. Only as we got closer, we saw that it's definitely one of the Mapogos with the 4 Majingilans on top of him.
It soon became clear that it was Kinky Tail being pinned down by the 4 intruders. He was injured but fighting to escape.
They were savage in their approach. I've never experienced something quite that brutal. They were starting to take him apart limb from limb. One was between his hind legs, damaging the genitalia, the soft underbelly. And then suddenly there was a snap that sounded like a gunshot.
You could hear the spine breaking.
lots of blood. And of course, it's so much more vivid when you see it happen right in front of you. The smell, the sound, the sight of it all, I think it's a little overwhelming.
Suddenly, Mr. T came from nowhere. He came from the side, attacking one of the Majingilans.
Kinky Tail is mortally wounded, but it doesn't stop Mr. T from trying to save his brother. Taking on 2 Majingilani.
Tried to help his brother, but he knew he could do nothing.
He tucked tail and he ran. 2 individuals that were still anchored on Kinky Tail peeled off. And they followed their brothers and went after Mr. T.
If caught, Mr. T would meet the same fate as his brother.
Kinky Tail was breathing very, very deeply.
Nobody said a word. You could hear a pin drop. As much as we would like to save a life of an animal, but there's no way you can interfere. There's no way you can do anything.
Mr. T managed to escape. The Majingalanis went back to finish what they'd started.
We could hear them coming for at least 10 minutes before they actually arrived, and then in the distance we could see them coming down the road.
They knew they had him outnumbered and injured. There was going to be no room for him healing up and ever being a threat ever again. They were going to end him then.
By then we knew Kinky Tail's fate was sealed. He was going to die. Seeing Kinky Tail being ripped apart, it was, I think, one of the worst moments in my life. One of the most difficult things for me was to see the reaction of the rangers. They were sad. You know, they experienced it in a more emotional manner.
I heard about Kinky Tail's death that evening, and I cried. It was a lion that was my favorite lion. I really enjoyed him, and I was upset by it. I broke the news to a lot of the guys the next morning on the radio, and there was a stunned silence. Guys didn't believe it. Guys didn't want to believe it. And I think there were quite a few tears shed.
The next morning, we all left the lodge. We wanted to see and to know what happened during the night. As we got to the site, what we found there was shocking. We found a hyena and 2 black-backed jackals feeding on the remains of Kinky Tail.
He was gone. of such a big, proud lion, there was nothing left.
One of the most emotional things that I've seen was a black-backed jackal running away with a mane of what used to be a big, majestic male lion. And that was the last I've ever seen of Kinky Tail.
Soon after the death of his brother, a badly injured Mr. T was seen moving west.
Mr. T decided this wasn't for him anymore. Not as a one-man band. He couldn't hold that territory.
I think Mr. T knew he'd lost his closest companion. His brother, his friend, somebody that would do anything for him. I think he also knew that he had lost ground with regards to territory.
Mr. T's natural instinct was to return to his coalition brothers.
We hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. And that morning we could see Mr. T from about 80 to 100 meters away. He was just watching them.
Makulu and his Western Coalition had families now, cubs to protect. Instinctively, Makulu knew all too well what can happen when a male enters another lion's territory. Mr. T may once have been like a brother, now he was an intruder. Mr. T had managed to escape the Majingalani coalition, who had torn Kinky Tail apart and taken over the brothers' eastern territory. Now he headed west, where Makulu and the remaining Mapojos were still kings. The volatile Mr. T had been responsible for breaking up the strongest coalition ever to reign in the Sabi Sand. How would his return be received?
Makulu Mapocho wasn't happy that Mr. T had come back. Yet he was accepted by the other 3 Mapocho that were here.
Very remarkable that he was able to rejoin his 4 colleagues back in the main coalition after that time.
The field guides were relieved that Mr. T was accepted without bloodshed. But Mr. T was Mr. T. These were not his prides, and they were not his cubs.
We expected Mr. T to accept the coalition's cubs, but he didn't.
I don't think any of us could imagine what was going to happen. None of us were prepared for it.
It was only a matter of days where he started to massacre all the cubs.
He would actually go and seek out the cubs that belonged to the coalition and actually kill them and eat them.
what was interesting, the other males didn't seem to do anything about it.
Many of these youngsters were Mr. T's nieces and nephews, but his brothers seemed unwilling to stop the carnage. Mr. T intended to take over the prides and mate with the lionesses, but the coalition's cubs had been standing in his way. So he brutally did what came naturally. The power in the West had shifted. Mr. T was the new king.
Once Mr. T had come back and killed all the cubs and established his dominance over the others, from then on we weren't sure what was going to happen. I think most of us had a fairly negative feeling about the situation.
For the next 2 years, the Majingalani slowly ate away at Mapocho territory. The intruders took over most of Mr. T and Kinky Tail's land, their prides, and almost certainly killed their cubs. During the long stalemate, more bad fortune struck the coalition when Pretty Boy and Rasta disappeared. It was suspected they were killed by the Majingalani. The mighty Mapocho coalition once ruled all of Sabi Sand. Now they were barely holding on to power.
There were only 3 of the Mapocho left. There was the Makulu, Mr. T, and there was the Scar male.
For 6 years, the Mapochos had been kings of Sabi Sand. Male lions don't normally survive in the wild longer than 12 years. Mr. T was 10, Scar 12, and Makulu was now 14.
They were getting older, rivals were rising nearby. The end was inevitable.
On the 16th of March 2012, yet another coalition of 5 males called the Salatis entered Mapocho territory from the south.
Early on morning drive, we turned off the car to just listen for something. We heard quite intense roaring coming from not more than 100 meters in front of us.
And we followed the tracks. It was quite clear to see that the Salatis were after the Mapocho.
They were young and strong. They were still getting into their prime, so they were ready for a fight, I think.
They had singled out one of the Mapocho, which one we weren't sure of.
Any aging lion would struggle in a fight with so many young males. But that didn't stop one of the Mapochos from defending the last of his territory.
By the time I arrived at the scene, Mr. T had already been attacked.
The last Mapocho king was fighting for his life, and he was alone.
Had a big bite into his spine, just above the back legs. and he was paralyzed from the back legs down. This made him very vulnerable to the attacks from all 4 lions that were coming at him at once.
The tactic they were using, and in a very ruthless way, was to sort of distract him one way so another male could bite him in the spine.
They knocked him over and would just maul him and bite him for 15, 20 seconds. And then they would stop and they would move away. They would then get up again, they would come back, and the barrage would start again. Mr. T, by that stage, would have been fighting for his life. I can remember him looking back at me. The fact that he was still able to get up and still try and take on the coalition after they'd ripped him apart gives you an idea of the strength and character of this magnificent animal. The 4 male lions that were attacking Mr. T were roaring constantly. It was the sign of a takeover. They were in charge now, and they were roaring, and they were letting the whole world know that they were in charge.
It was a very intense sighting. The emotions going through you ranged from excitement to disbelief, to awe. The gaping wounds where his spine had been bitten down to, and just a very subdued lion with his head down on the ground, his paws forward and his back legs useless.
There was no comeback from this. Mr. T was going to die, and he was going to die that day.
My brother and I were there, and we literally watched him take his last breath.
To see an end to an era like that does have an emotional effect on you, and I'm not sure that I would like to see that again. Very emotional ending to the whole Mapocho saga.
I think Mr. T, he lived like a male lion, and then he died like a male lion.
He went out the way he probably would have wanted to have gone out, protecting and fighting for territory.
After the Mapocho's 6 years in power, the most violent reign in people's memory had finally come to an equally violent end. Makulu and Scar were the last of the Mapochos. Way beyond their prime and heavily outnumbered from all sides, their only option was to leave the Sabi Sand. The Mapojos will never be seen here again. But there is hope for their future generations.
The Mapocho bloodline that I'm aware of that still lives on is within the Ottawa Pride. There's 3 big adult females. They have 2 sub-adults at the moment. But I'd like to think hopefully Makulu Mapocho fathered those females.
The fact that his cubs were the ones that actually survived the onslaught of Mr. T. And I think it was sort of a bit of justice there.
The more I hear about the Mapojos, they are an incredibly interesting group of lions, and they are, to some extent, the ultimate lion. It may seem that their behavior is evil, is very aggressive in terms of a human point of view, but ultimately, they are being the best lions they can be.
The 6 Mapojos did what male lions have to do to survive and pass on their genes. But they took it further. They set new standards for conquering territory and exposed levels of violence never before witnessed in the Sabi Sand.
There is such a dark side to lions that isn't often highlighted. It is cute and it is amazing and it's regal and it's beautiful, but it's difficult, it's vicious, it's dangerous. Mapogos showed us what it is to be a lion.